Hi, this is Gavin Haverstick, and this is The Sound Project. All right, we're here today with Mike Picotte from Sweetwater.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it's so great that you could take some time out. I know it's a busy time for you. All the time's busy.
Oh, yeah,
for you.
we appreciate you coming to Gear Fest and doing all this stuff, and hopefully you guys are having a good time this week.
Yeah, it's been really great. So we've been shooting the podcast here and meeting other content creators and just getting to see all the gear that's here. And it's just cool to have so many people in the same spot that's passionate about music, technology, and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's always a great week, and I always look forward to it every year.
Yeah, for sure. So I've known you for how long, man? It's probably been
21 years, I think.
Yeah, something like
probably
that.
Probably like 21 years.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like your background and how you made it to where you are right now.
My background, I was primarily in the studio background, but also converted over to live as well quite a bit for mixing front of house. But I was MCA Records, Universal Music Group in Nashville with Tony Brown, Mark Wright. Some of those guys kind of came up like interning and then working for them. So learning basically like a lot of the stuff in Nashville originally. And then I kind of came by the way of Sweetwater from a technology-based side. Like my background was pretty deep in Pro Tools, pro audio gear, outboard, even my own studio, own an SSL console and tons and tons of outboard gear. So I'm still actively working and still do quite a bit of projects for a couple of labels.
Yeah, and even for me.
Yes.
Sometimes.
We work on your stuff a lot with, which is always fun to work on.
Yeah, for sure. So you were in the studio world mostly, and then you found your way to Sweetwater, and I mean, you've been here for 21 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I know that your role is kind of evolved over time here, but what's kind of your favorite part about working here?
I think that every day is different. Love my clients. We have such a good relationship-based business here, so just actually a lot of the clients have friends. Like I got some flying in last night, and they came in last night and this weekend, and we'll spend some time this weekend at the lake. And these are all rooms I've done and guys that we've worked with and done rooms with, and they just come every year, But as far as the company goes, I think just that one-on-one relationship and actually getting to work with people and just being part of their lives and doing something we love. Like I love the technology and the ever-changing technology in this industry, so it's definitely makes every day fun.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts too about our job is that it starts out as just a client. We don't even know the person, but then we become friends, and like my employees that work for us, they're just always just like, wow, we're really lucky. Like all of the people we work with are genuinely great people.
Yeah.
It's like it's rare to find somebody that you don't want to work with. So we're lucky in that respect.
Oh yeah, very lucky.
Yeah. So we've worked together on quite a few projects. I mean, we could kind of go through some of those and talk about them. I mean, one of the first ones was Paul George, the NBA basketball player, and he is when he was still working here He's playing basketball for the Pacers. and he. Actually, we started that project like a month or two after he broke his leg.
Yes.
And that was. I also. It's such a funny project because normally my referrals are very linear. It's like you tell a client, "Hey, you should talk to Gavin," and then they call me. With Paul's, I remember he asked his gardener if he knew how to design studios, and his gardener said, "Of course not. No, I don't." But he's like, "But I have a friend who has he designs speakers." And so he went to that guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I design speakers, but I don't design recording studios." And he's like, "But this guy that walks his dog in the neighborhood, his son designs studios." Like he was talking to me one day about it, and he just happens to live in my dad's neighborhood. So it's just a roundabout way to get involved with that. And I remember going over to Paul's house and seeing he had like a couple KRK speakers, an interface, and a microphone and a laptop. But we're building this awesome studio. And so I was like, "Do you have any place to buy gear?" And he's like, "No, I don't." And so I was like, "I know the perfect person to talk to." So got you involved with that, and talk a little bit about like what your role in that project was.
On his, a lot of it, obviously you were doing the acoustic design and the design of the room. So Some of that was once we got the plan done is like conduit, plans, making sure that we had be able to put our cable runs where we wanted to put them, electrical, working with Shauna's crew and stuff on the electrical stuff. And then, so I was like kind of like a bridge between all that. So a lot of people don't realize there's the acoustic design, then there's somebody who has to build it, and you have a contractor, which is pretty important to also have good communication with them. And then for me as well as the integrator too, by putting the console in, design the custom furniture for that one, because that's when we were going back and forth. And what was interesting about the design and doing custom furniture for that room, which a lot of the ergonomics of the room was that the height of how tall he is.
Yeah.
So we were like, we have to make it comfortable.
Yeah.
And you don't think about just the walking and the lines and stuff like that when he gets into certain, because we ended up putting that upstairs and above his room.
Yeah. It was the thing I remember in our CAD package for that. We had a block of a 6'8" person that we kept putting in different areas to make sure that I didn't want him to have to duck his head to get around, because he has an A-frame kind of. It's above his garage area, and I just wanted to make sure he didn't feel like he was always having to duck down or anything like that.
Yeah, and I was trying to keep the furniture like with the racks and everything for the cable troughs and everything we put an SSL console in there, but with that and the outboard with the patch bays and everything to keep it like same thing when he walked around, and no matter where he'd walk or cut to get behind something. Yeah, that same exact stuff of how tall he was, because he's tall.
Yeah, he's a tall dude, and that's why when you and I got a photo with him, we made him sit down.
Yeah, he's sitting in the chair and we're behind the console. Yeah, we had to, because it was like the first one. I think I remember when we had those photos taken. I remember it was like, no, you got to sit down, man. I was like, we look like very small.
Yeah. So yeah, he had a control room and then a vocal booth, so he had a roommate BA at the time that was really into music as well, and
his sister did a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, and so it was fun to kind of convert. There wasn't a whole lot of layout choices that needed to be made because the rooms were actually set up in that way. We made a little bit of adjustments on the size of the room. Then we had to isolate it too, because it was like one of those things where Paul didn't want it to disturb his sleep, because the master bedroom was on the floor below, just a little bit off of there. And he's like, if people are in the studio late at night and I got a game the next day, I've got to be able to sleep.
And then also too, I think one of the most impressive parts of that room was because when I tuned that room and everything, it sounded like just unbelievable. We got that still was that control room sounded amazing, but was the depth of the room and the way you did the bass trapping too. Right, that wall in the back.
Yeah, there's this weird like alcove that was back there, and we kind of built in bass trapping plus a little area for storage. The studios never have enough storage, and so it was nice to do that. And we brought in Tri-Phase Technologies, did all of the construction side of things, and Matt Call with Simplified Acoustics did the stretch fabric.
Yeah, Matt's like my go-to guy, and probably yours too, and stuff when it comes to that, and we love him. So he does remarkable. Every project, he does a great job.
What I love about Matt is that when he gets on site, there's some contractors that when they're getting ready to do a job, if something is just slightly off from the plans, they just throw their hands up and they're just like, well, I can't work like this. It's like, this is wrong, and so things got to be reworked. Yeah. Matt just rolls in and says, all right, I'll just roll with it and make it happen. So
and we've done like fitness facilities and churches, and like it's all kind of different acoustic projects too that are even away from the studio with Matt, and he always does a really good job. And that's actually another part of studio design sometimes when people are integrating their studios, that they don't it's not at the forefront of their mind.
Right.
It's like like I have a contractor that can build it, but the acoustics, especially to go to the plan that you design, is critical.
Well, and so much of it is the aesthetics need to be right. For these studios, they have to have the right vibe, and need to be creative spaces. And if you go into a space and like, hey, this fabric's all saggy and this doesn't look crisp and clean, then it's just something that we want to make sure that it's handled properly. And so a good contractor like Tri-Phase did a great job installing all the kinetics clips and channel systems and all the isolation piece of things. And Matt came in and did the finish work. And the end result, I mean, that studio, it's just such a bummer he got traded like a year and a half later.
Yeah, I know.
He had to sell his house, and I wanted him to sell his house to Victor Oladipo because he's a musician as well. But we ended up going over to his place and packing up all the equipment. It's a sad day.
I know, it was a really sad day.
Shipping it out to LA, but But yeah, so that was a super fun project, and we've also done work for HiFive Studios up in Milwaukee.
Ryan Rossman and stuff. We put that on. I mean, in phase one for him, I remember it was you did the room and the design, and then we came through like later, making sure that he did like the 5088 console, and then redid all the wiring. I think when he originally did that studio, he did some stuff where, they pulled some cable, and he was like, like some of the soldering and stuff. So we went and redid like all the plates, all the infrastructure. Redid the wires, patch base console, and everything. And that's a really, really nice sounding live room, much larger than it appears sometimes on photos.
I think it's
very large.
1,200 square feet or something for that live room. It's really, really big. It's like an old 100-year-old schoolhouse, I think is what it was, and then it had been converted to different office types. And I remember when Ryan was first looking for a space, he was looking at downtown Milwaukee, and the first building I walked into that he's like, I'm going to sign a lease for this spot. It was on the first floor of a commercial building, but there was an accountant above him, I believe, and then a magazine company to the left, and then a lawyer to the right. I was like, you don't want your studio here, and that's a big part of like getting people that do this like you and I a lot, getting them involved early can help out, because he could have signed that lease and then been stuck with all these isolation issues, and now he's got a standalone building on his own.
We did the same thing in Toronto too, right? Toronto with Steve that one time. Like, didn't we have you come up and Toronto, or at least show you all the plans ahead of time?
Showed me the plans.
Yeah, and it was like, no, don't do this. And that was I remember there's a job in Toronto too that was like, we can't do this. This room's not going to work. And
I hate to be the bearer of bad news sometimes, but it's better to have that bad news up front than like after you're already committed to something. So, so once he found that new building, it was great. He's got a large live room. He's got a nice sized control room, and then two ISO booths. And one's a dead room that's more for just vocals, and then he has one that has the acoustical fulfillment Flex 48s in it, so he can like change the way the room sounds depending on what he's doing.
And then we use the chamber, kind of like even we're pretty smart with the two like airlocks to make sure that they can be used for like cab isolation and stuff, which actually the one in the back turned out really, really nice. Where it was being used often.
That's good. That's good. And he's got the lounge up front with the pool table and everything. It's a really nice, comfortable space. I'm hoping to get up there and visit him soon, because I haven't seen the studio in quite a few years. And,
it's nice. Yeah, it's changed a lot of upgrades, especially with the new with the new console and everything. It sounds fantastic.
That's awesome.
The recordings and drum sounds he gets.
Cool. Another one that we actually just did a YouTube walkthrough of is Oak Hollow out in Oregon City. And that space, I remember you introducing me to Lauren years and years ago. It was 2013, I think, maybe when you introduced me.
That's probably about
something
right.
Like that. Yeah. And it took him and his friends like 2 years to build the place, but it's immaculate.
He built it.
Yeah.
He's like, he built that, and it was amazing.
I remember him telling me one of the first conversations. He said, "You're going to need to be patient with me." He's like, because this is not my full-time job, but me and my friends are. He's lucky because all of his bandmates are contractors, and he does project management, so it's like the ideal situation. But that video, we'll link it in the description. But it's that being in your backyard is just the dream, right?
Yeah.
It's he's got a nice control room. The live room's my favorite part of that studio. It's such a cool, warm feeling, like creative space. But then like there's so much flexibility. You can move just instruments around the room, and the way the ceiling clouds are done, you can get a different sound depending on where you're at.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite conversations with him was when he was building some of that stuff to your design. He was, he was like meticulous when it came to making sure, which is the way you have to be, but he definitely was making sure he hit everything perfect.
And the woodwork in that room, it's just immaculate. Like everything is perfect. And so it was fun to get out there and be able to see it, because I had actually not seen it since it was complete. I went out there to do testing when there was no acoustical treatment up. But this is the first time being back, and it had been 7 or 8 years since I'd been there. And it's just, it's nice. Really cool too, because it's something where when we're doing these projects, it's like, we're creating these really cool rooms that sound great, but on the other end of that is a person who that's been their dream for forever to have something like that.
Yeah, and I always take that approach too with with all jobs really, but with Lauren is I always I'd like to sell them gear that they're going to use, not gear that later it's going to be like, okay, now let's trade that in for this, or let's keep swapping. Like, let's get the studio, because I always say that we're fortunate because we get to do a room design, which is always great to be part of, and then we do another one and another one and another one, so you get to keep doing these jobs. But for the client, that's like exactly what you said. This is their dream, or somebody might have waited 10 years, 20 years, whatever it might be, to build this studio, and they have one shot. They're not going to build. There's some clients that build multiple studios, but most clients are going to when we do it from the ground up. They got one opportunity. So you really want to make sure that they get it right, because if I was in those shoes, which I am now, we're going to be doing my room in the fall, a new room. So it's like when you're doing a ground up design like that, you want to make sure it's right, because that's going to be the space you work in.
Well, and I'm also really cognizant of the fact that there's budgets for these projects, but a lot of times these budgets are tied to individuals that have worked their whole life to save up this money to make this happen. And I always want to obviously give them the best possible room, but there's also things that come up where it's like, well, we could value engineer this without sacrificing quality, and we could lower that price, and then you'd have more money for gear or more money to do something else with it. Because I take that really seriously, because sure, there's projects where the budget is no object. It's just like, do everything that you can to make this great. But there's other times where you just have to be really strategic with what you're doing and make sure you're good stewards of what they're doing.
Yeah, and the same even on the gear side. A lot of people like, I'm going to throw gear in this room and do this, and that's why a lot of times you're hearing from me too, where I'm like, acoustics are a big part of it. So like there's projects where obviously the large scope ground up, contractor is going to build it from the ground up. There's also jobs where it's like, what can we do acoustically for a room, or what can we modify, or to make it the best it can be, even on budgets that aren't as large. And that can be like panel placement, bass trapping, all the different stuff that we're doing to make the room the best it can be. But I always try to stress that with clients when they approach me, because a lot of times the gear budget can also come down a little bit to make sure we get the acoustics right, because if the room doesn't sound good, the projects aren't going to come out the way that they intend to. So you want to actually help guide your clients in a way that's going to be a room they can work in for their career or for years to come, that they can actually be proud of the results that they get out of that room. Yeah,
and obviously you're really great at having that conversation with people, and sometimes it's hard for people to pivot from talking about gear, because that's the fun part usually for people. They just want to get the new nice speakers or compressors or anything like that. But like you said, if the gear will only perform as well as the room will allow it to a lot of times. And
a lot of times there's a lot of good speaker brands out there. I'm big fans of companies like PMC, ATC, Ocean Wave, Focal. There's a lot of great brands out there. Atom Audio. There's a lot of good speaker brands, and the one thing that you have to talk to about a lot of people is like, sometimes they'll say, "Well, I heard this speaker and I hated it." Yeah, and I was like, "Well, did you hate the speaker or did you hate the room?" Yeah, because sometimes there's a lot of those brands that make a fantastic speaker, but the performance of the monitors is drastically affected by the room. So if you put them in a bad room, I had somebody that hated one brand, and when they sent pictures of the room, it was all glass everywhere. And I was like, we can keep sending box after box after box, and it's not gonna, you're not gonna like the speakers, no matter what we do, no matter what brand we send.
Yeah, it's all part of the big puzzle piece. You gotta get them the right speakers, the right gear, but then the room has to perform, and then you'll get the full value out of what you've purchased. It's like even microphones. You buy these amazing microphones, they're very sensitive, they pick up everything. Well, they'll pick up a bad room too. So, So that's,
and then there's we get that a lot of times. There'll be like even microphones that are picking up like U47s picking up HVAC noise and stuff, and everyone's like, I didn't realize it could pick that up.
Yeah.
Which and also placement too, like with a good room too, is placement of speakers and placement. We did that at Josh's room, over in Columbus, where we went and tuned it. And, when I was brought in to tune that room with TJ with Neat, we ended up moving that sub around and finding ideal placement to make sure the mix position was ideal and the best it could be. And that was an incredible room too. So his room sounds fantastic.
Yeah, we have that's Josh Dunn from 21 Pilots. We did a YouTube video recently on that one as well, and those projects are you helped with both of the 21 Pilots jobs that, or all three of them that we were involved with. And
TJ, he's a good friend, and me and him go way back too. And when he was first doing those, it was I think on the first one we had Triphase too.
Yes,
Triphase was involved in Matt, and so it's kind of like a being in Columbus and Indianapolis for one company, it was easy to get everybody over there, but a very similar team when you have like Matt call and doing the wrapping of the rooms and stuff like that. So you get that, you kind of get it works really well when you actually get a team of like one goes in, next goes in. We just kind of make the room go. But he did a really good job. But I was helping him on the backside of that, and he's had a great relationship with them for years. And
and those rooms are all fantastic. It's like, and it's neat to be just a little part of what they're doing. Obviously their talent and everything is what makes them successful. But it's just like to hear, like I remember when Trench came out and Tyler had written it in his basement in the studio we did for him. It was just like, wow, like that's so cool that we had a little bit of part of that, and then to see all the success they've had even since then with some of the other albums and going to tours and seeing them. So, and
I think Jim loves it too.
Jim is awesome. Yeah, Jim Dunn is Josh's. We call him Josh's son, but his golden retriever. Actually, we are in the process of probably in the next year or so getting a golden retriever for the family, and Jim's a good part of that. And also Charlie, which is Chip Freeman's dog up in Traverse City area. So we've been influenced by Jim quite a bit.
Nice. Yeah.
So also, I guess how difficult is it when you have you're having that conversation to pivot people to think about acoustics? Because I know it's obviously they're calling Sweetwater to get gear. How's that go?
Yeah, I think some people think on the sales side of it, they might think like you don't. The one thing because of that lifelong relationship you have with clients, you want to do the right thing for them. So you have to look at like the budget if they come to you with a certain amount of money to do a room. What's the best thing for them? Like what's the best thing for your client? And I don't think a lot of clients are used to hearing that. Yeah. Like, I know you want to buy the gear right now. Hold on a second. Let's pump the brakes. Let's look at the overall project, what you're doing. But it is a lifelong relationship with a lot of clients, and there's going to be more gear and more sales and stuff that come on the back end. So most of the time, I think a lot of the time it's easy when you explain the overall scope or the overall project, from the ground up of what they're looking at doing. Yeah. I think a lot of people realize that it's for the best interest, and I think we're all that way. It's the same thing where I want this tomorrow, but it's a process. Yeah. And if you've been waiting to do a room, or if you're waiting to like build a room, or it's your first room, or if this is like we said, you waited 10 years to build your dream studio. I think a lot of clients listen really well when you actually say like, let's pump the brakes, let's get the right people involved, let's make sure it's the best it can be. Because of that, it's like you're going to work in this room for hopefully the rest of your life, let's not rush it.
I think it's really great too how there's been many projects that you've got us involved in, and you've told people like, I'd love to sell you those great speakers. However, like you got to take care of that room first, you know, which, that speaks a lot to a client because, they think, they call up some dealer somewhere and they'd want to sell them a $40,000 pair of speakers, not caring about the room. But you really think about the whole project because you've been involved in so many of these.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of it too is I do work. Like I do, I said, there's probably not many, when clients call me, I was like, I own like an SSL AWS 948. I own PMC and ATC speakers and like a very large collection of outboard gear and microphones. And I know exactly like what they're going through and what they want to do. So I'm in their shoes of like mixing is very difficult in a bad room, or if it's not, and not many people actually understand, and rightfully so, understand acoustics, and they can work, and it's like if you put them in a position to mix and they can actually rely on what they're hearing and work, then the work comes out on the back end. Versus trying to learn what something's happening and trying to figure out like all the problematic spots and checking mixes back and forth. And that was one of the things. And I think a lot of the clients I think my favorite part of the process is when they hear it for the first time, or when they first get into the room and they're just like, because most of the time when it's complete, they're listening to it after it's been tuned, after everything's set correctly. They just listen, and just like the expression on the face. Sometimes it's different for everybody. You get it's emotional for some. For some people, it's like there's just this moment of awe, like wow, it's done. It sounds incredible. And
I remember that day actually with Paul on his project, because were you there at the final? I think you were there for the final tuning. Yeah, he was out on his boat fishing because he loves to fish, and we called him and said, "Hey, it's all tuned up and ready to go." And he came back. I remember like it was almost like a cartoon. His jaw dropped. And he went from again KRK speakers, which are nice speakers, but in untreated room, small interface, all that, and to then ATC 110 soffit mounted, and so it was just like blowing him away, and it's cool to see that, and
with the hidden subs,
with the hidden subs, right?
Subs,
but it's just amazing to be a part of that journey, and then to see it all come together, because it's not a short process, either. It's not like the one we did for Tyler Joseph, the first one, we only got 2.5 months to make that happen, and that's
fast,
really fast. And so most of the time this is 6 months to a year, to sometimes it's longer, and to get to that moment where it's all worth it is very fun.
And I think that it's good for people to actually understand the process takes, but the end result's worth it too.
Yeah. And we have another podcast that's just talking about the team that's involved, and we've talked a little bit about it today. But nice thing, when you call me and say, "Hey, I've got this project, I need your help on it," I'm relieved, because I know that all the stuff that you do is going to get taken care of properly. Because sometimes we're the first call, and we're not getting a referral from someone like you that could handle all of those details, and we've got to rope people in and assemble the entire team. But it's been nice to work on these projects together, and I just know that you do a fantastic job of what you do, and we can handle the acoustics, and it's going to be a good result.
Yeah, you almost work as a project manager, because I always tell I bring them in, and usually the expectation is for the acoustics, like I said, the integration from the contractor to Matt, to handling like wrapping and stuff like that, and setting timeline expectations, and also just making sure that the clients are aware of all the pieces.
Right.
And when you have but I feel like project management, from even catching small details on CAD drawings, because often the design gets done and we're talking the gear side and possible expansion. So sometimes it's like cable troughs here, or we're gonna have some guitar through, maybe it's putting cabs in isolation booths, and making sure we can actually minimize everything down to the noise, all the way to the best way to route cabling and stuff, and all that, to make it as clean as it can be, is really. And now with Atmos, a lot of Atmos rooms we're working on right now, and even together, and with Atmos now we have to take into consideration a lot more speakers.
Yeah. Well, we have Adric Channing's room in Knoxville that we're working on, and we just went through that exercise of hey, let's run conduits to here, because when it's in design, it's a design from the ground up. Sky's the limit as far as that's concerned, and you want to get all the options possible when it comes to conduiting, because you can do that up front, and doing it after the fact's hard. So.
Yeah, and it's very inexpensive to plan for future expansion, but important too, because Atmos, we've always thought about acoustics and designing a room for stereo, left and right. Now we have it's different. Now we have to consider the energy of the room changes quite a bit. So we have to make sure that we take all that into consideration, even when you're doing your part.
For sure, and we also, so we get Atmos is a conversation in almost all the jobs we do now. It's even if it's someone that we're coming in to improve their existing room, they're like, well, I'm thinking about doing Atmos, and let's say they have a a non-environment room where they have soffit mounted speakers and a hard front wall. Well, suddenly now you have rears that are firing directly at that surface, and we have to account for all of that and make changes. But especially when we're designing from the ground up, it even comes into play when we put our windows or our doors, where they're placed in the room, to make sure that the surround speakers can fit properly without blocking a window or a door. So it's a fun kind of Tetris exercise, where it's everything you change affects something else, and you're trying to fit everything together properly.
Yeah, you get side speakers, rear speakers, front width now speakers. If you do I'd 914 set them. So it's I love the width speakers. So there's but that's another sight line and another angle, another spot where we don't want a door.
Right.
So it's,
right. And I know another part of your job is like you help with the integration and selecting gear and all of that, but you're actually going out and pulling wires and soldering things, and like you do the physical work as well.
Yeah, I've been doing that my whole career because, I think back in college, I actually rewired a facility with a broadcasting engineer. His name was Jerry Eli. And, when I was young, really young, I think I was 17, 18 working with him, he actually taught me soldering and everything. He was a broadcast guy.
Yeah.
So he was fixing, he'd open up gate stay levels and fix them or whatever he had to do. And prior to that, there was a guy in the town I grew up with that owned an electronic shop, and my mom did accounting and books for them, so I'd spend a lot of time, but he would repair electronic gear, so I was always soldering and doing stuff with him and learning, whether it's, capacitors or whatever we have to, do, and so I can actually do a lot of that work, but on a lot of projects, it was by necessity for some clients that you work on this project with them, and we get to a point where, I have other people I call too that do a lot of that stuff, but there's some jobs sometimes that they're just like, can you do this, or can you help me with this, or can and whatever we need to get done to make it right. You try to help as much as you can. It spreads you thin once in a while, but but at the same time though, it's done right, and it's gonna be the way it should be.
And it's funny when we sometimes when we call each other, it's like, what city are you in? Yep. Like, because I'm somewhere else, and it's like a lot of travel, but I enjoy it. It's honestly, like, getting out and being with the client and being in the spaces is
it's
a
great.
joy for me.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes I get that, like last week when I did Albuquerque and Phoenix, and I had Hannah was like, where are you again this week? Like, where are you right now? What time zone are you in?
Yeah.
So that's a common conversation.
Yeah. So man, it's been so great to like sit down with you, and I mean, we've been friends for a long time, but when you start to think about all the things we've done together, it's like, and I actually think that you've probably been in more rooms of ours than most people have, like even more than some of my employees have. Like, so you've been around, you've always been a big, supporter of ours, and really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it's great working with you, and, like, it's just the confidence too. Every time I send a client, the clients love you.
Thanks,
everything
man.
goes smooth, and I think that's really important when we're working with these projects too. Is just that knowing it's going to be done correctly.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thank you for
Really
having me
appreciate
and coming out to Gear Fest and being on campus all week.
Thank
I know
you.
you spend a lot of time here when you're busy.
Yeah, it's super fun, and it's always fun to be here. So,
All right, we appreciate it.
thanks. Well, that's been another episode. Thank you for being part of the Sound Project. If you've got any ideas for future episodes, feel free to email us at info@haverstickdesigns.com, and we'll see you next week.